It's the Locked On Flyers podcast for Thursday, April 10th, your daily dose of Flyers news, analysis, and high quality content that did not have the Flyers scoring 8 goals on my bingo card for that game against the Rangers, but I'll take it.
I give the first star to the announce crew.
You're Locked On Flyers, your daily podcast on the Philadelphia Flyers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey there, and thanks for making Locked On Flyers your first listen every day. I am Rachel Donner. I've been podcasting about the Flyers, the NHL, and hockey for a decade. I'm here with prospect expert and Flyers credentialed reporter for 19 years, Russ Cohen. To keep up with our latest episodes and Flyers news, you can find us at Locked On Flyers on all your favorite socials, and of course here on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We're going to dig into a little discussion of the Flyers at 5-on-5, where we mentioned Tyson Foerster, and I think maybe that spurred him on to shoot the puck a little bit more in this game vicariously. Plus, we are going to take a look at draft-eligible prospect Malcom Spence, a really interesting option for the Flyers there, but so much going on in that game against the Rangers. The first, I think, of which is that we saw Aleksei Kolosov in net, right?
Yeah, and I'm not sure why that decision was made, but honestly, he made some good saves, but he really needs to figure out how to play net, and he's not an NHL goalie right now. He's just not. I mean, some of those pucks he wasn't ready for.
Yep.
What was it? The fourth goal, he made himself smaller it's just on the Miller shot. Like, I don't
Yeah.
even know what he was doing at times. Luckily,
Yeah,
Jonathan Quick played the worst game of his life.
oh my God. It was brutal. I mean, it was
He
definitely
was.
a goaltending optional game.
Yes.
For sure. He was 24 for 29 in this one. His last game had been with the Phantoms on March 22nd. So, I think you can give a little bit to being rusty, but it is also very
A
clear
positioning,
that
you
he's
listened
not
to
there
John
yet.
Davidson. He
No,
was
I know.
basically telling
I
you
know.
he's not squared up here. He's not JD does not hold back with goalies because he's a goalie, right?
He
So
does not. And so, I mean, Brian Boucher tries to be sympathetic.
he does.
But it's a different approach
It
than
is a different
JD.
approach.
It's a really interesting comparison, I think,
Yeah.
between how they approach goaltending in their announcing. But yeah, I think you look at that. They sent Abels back to the Phantoms,
Mhm.
obviously, and I think that made sense
Sure.
given that they were playing Karsen Dorwart in these games.
Mhm.
Plus, Alex Bump could magically appear next week.
Mhm.
So I understand why, and that made sense.
Yeah.
One of the Flyers goaltenders that I kind of expected to play this game, to be honest, Ivan Fedotov got the Masterton nomination
Mhm.
for the Flyers. And we talked about potential nominees last week. Didn't really bring him up per se, but I understand why. I think it made
True.
sense.
There was discussion about him, like, offline. I'd seen discussion, but like there could have been 3 to 5 guys that you would put up there, and we talked about 3 of them.
Yeah.
So any of them I felt like were worthy.
I think so. I think so too. But Fedotov does have a really fascinating story,
He
and his
does.
path to the NHL
Yes.
has been arduous in many
Oh, yeah.
ways. So when you talk about perseverance, I
Mhm.
think he
No, he's in
absolutely
there.
embodies that. So congrats to him on that nomination. Again, going back to this Rangers game now, just a dumb game overall.
Yeah.
I think
It was
more for the
slop.
Rangers
There's a
than
lot
the
of slop.
Flyers.
Yeah.
That's for sure. As a result, now the Devils have clinched a playoff spot, so the outcome was good neither way, I
Yeah,
think.
they were sitting back in their easy chair watching this game. They were probably giggling.
Yeah, and JD said as much, but the Flyers were a little better in the
They were.
second period through the rest of the
Well, that
game.
was
But
their best second period in a long time. That's true.
oh, for sure. And I just really think this fast and loose style that they've been playing since Torts was fired, sometimes it's working and sometimes it isn't. But this is 3 out of 5 games that Bradshaw's been the interim head coach where they've had 6 or more goals. And that just speaks to how they're playing, with him on the bench.
Yeah, he's definitely unlocked a little bit of that offense, but the problem is he's getting that extra offense for the defenseman really pushing it and pinching it, and it's like, and then you end up paying for it on the other end too. So, with shorthanded goals again. So it's like, I don't
Yeah,
know.
I just don't think they care at this point, and
No,
that's
I don't think
fine.
they care.
I
I think that's true.
Because I certainly don't care as long as they're, playing in a way that's gonna benefit them in the
Yeah.
long run, I think, and having some positivity and scoring is that thing.
I mean, I don't know if it's going to benefit Cam York. He does not look good.
No, huge mistake there that led to the penalty shot, but, I mean, luckily, Kolosov stopped that one.
Yeah, he did.
Sanheim got involved pretty heavily
He
offensively.
did.
That's something we've wanted more of
Yep.
him
Yep.
in
And
the
he
second
showed it.
half of the season.
Mhm.
Showed that Jamie Drysdale was getting involved
He was getting involved,
offensively.
but he was missing the net. Like, it's like
Well,
he's only half there. It's like, it's just not good enough. I'm sorry. I need to
it,
see more.
absolutely, but again, considering the circumstances, I think trying is
I
going to
need
be a good step right now.
Yeah, I'm past that. I need more results based. Trying is fine. I need results.
Yeah, I would say, the Kate's line got
That was a good
multiple
line.
goals
Yeah.
in the game, including the Sanheim goal. And Sanheim,
Yeah.
I think, works really well with that line.
He does.
So that kind of allows him to get more involved defensively because they play a style of hockey that allows him to do that because they'll cover for him.
Yeah, a big mistake that two big mistakes. One big mistake the Rangers made was matching up Carson Soucy against the
Mm,
Tippett line. Like, you saw the speed difference. It was
I
ugly,
know.
man. He didn't even score on it, but he almost did. But it was ugly. It was just, they never did it again, by the way. I didn't notice them do it at the rest of the game. And then on the Foerster last goal, not the last goal, his second goal, Trocheck came off the bench and he didn't even pick him up. That's why he was wide open.
Yep.
Who knows, man?
Oh, God, what a mess the
What a
Rangers
mess.
were.
They are a disaster. The fans
I
are
will
so fed
say,
up there. They really are.
oh, believe me, I live here. I know.
Yeah.
But I think one of the other things that we've talked about is Sean Couturier building a net front presence because we know he's slower right now,
Right.
right? And so he's trying to make himself useful in other
And I
ways.
think he
A-
is. He's back
He
checking.
really
He's doing
is.
some things. Yeah. Yeah. For
And
the
I
people
think,
that want him bought out, it's not going to happen, people. So I do think he recognizes that he's got another role now that he could possibly play. And I think he's doing that.
yeah, and I think, he could do some net front practice over this
Mhm.
offseason with some
Yeah.
more deflection work and really kick that into high gear. Because again,
Yeah.
that's something the Flyers haven't had recently, or the past 2, 3 seasons, is somebody really good net front getting those quality deflections. And I think he could do it.
Yeah, and I got to poke a hole in one thing that you did tweet about. There is no comparison between Michkov and Panarin. They're completely two different players, two different styles. There is really nothing alike other than they're Russian.
That is true, but they're gonna do it anyway, Russ, because that's what they do. One other note on Flyers players, Karsen Dorwart, not a good game too for
No, this was a
him.
learning game for him.
Yeah, took a bad penalty, and then he had that deflection leading to the tying goal when it was 3-3, back 20 years ago, I guess it feels
Yeah,
like now,
yeah.
the way that game went. But I think, it was an awakening for him.
Yes,
And
for
I
sure.
think in these circumstances where the game ultimately doesn't matter for the Flyers, that's the kind of game you want him to learn
Mhm.
from, and hopefully he will.
Yeah.
I think that'll be a good thing. Ryan Poehling got a couple of assists in the game, continues to be really strong. So, lots of
Did you
good
notice
things.
the sales job by JD, the former boss of John Tortorella, the former coach? Hey, he says he wants to coach again. It's like, yeah, but he's under contract.
I know. We talked about that, and
If the
the
Flyers,
unlikely scenario where he could return to the
just
Rangers.
remember, though, if the team's desperate enough, the Flyers could get a draft pick out of it. So,
For sure. All right. Well, that segment was a little chaotic because so much went
oh,
on. The
it was
Flyers
chaotic.
the whole game was chaotic. So it goes hand in hand, I think. What is not chaotic and needs a lot of work, actually, in the grand scheme of things, is the Flyers 5-on-5 offensive play. And we are talking about that coming up next.
Do you have trouble sleeping? If so, you're not alone. That used to be me, lacking rest, tossing and turning. I was late for meetings. I never felt like myself. That's until I found Bare Mattress. Bare Mattress and their sleep recovery technology helped me fall asleep faster as well as enjoy deeper sleeps. I felt like myself again, and you can too. Bare Mattress knows that every sleeper is different. That's why they have their sleep quiz on their website that finds you your perfect match. As a side sleeper, I matched with the Elite Hybrid mattress, and I've been telling everyone in my life they have to try Bare Mattress risk-free. You can sleep on your Bare Mattress up to 120 nights, and if you're not getting the best sleep of your life, you can get it refunded. They'll pick it up with absolutely no hassle. So go to baremattress.com and use my promo code LOCKEDONNHL at checkout to get 40% off site-wide. This offer is not available anywhere else. You have to use my promo code on the very last page of checkout to get this discount. That's baremattress.com. Use my promo code LOCKEDONNHL for 40% off site-wide. Baremattress.com, promo code LOCKEDONNHL.
All right. On tomorrow's show, we will have a preview of our last back-to-back of the season. Hooray, we did it. We are facing the New York Islanders and suddenly playoff-bound Ottawa Senators. I say suddenly, it wasn't suddenly,
No.
but we're going to talk about that
Yeah.
and why and how they did it with our old friend Claude Giroux there. For now, I thought it was really interesting that at practice yesterday, Flyers interim head coach Brad Shaw was asked about the team's 5-on-5 play by Kevin Kurz of The Athletic. It was a really good question. And I was also very intrigued by Bradshaw's answer to that because I think he was trying to hedge a little bit. And we're going to get into why here because Bradshaw talked about how 2 years ago they made a decision that they were going to change things about how to create offense with puck movement and positioning. They started using the stretch pass more, which we know they did. And the metrics were somewhat good last year because they didn't have to defend as much. And that's the point
Right.
that Shaw was making. Like good offense means less defense,
Mhm.
right? And it was very, very frustrating for other teams because as Bradshaw said, other teams had to make 2 to 3 passes before they could get a shot attempt off, which was much more than it had been previously, which again makes perfect sense. However, as we are probably aware, Russ, they have not executed on that this year nearly as well as they did last year.
No, I mean, they do some stretch passes. They're definitely not doing as many. And, we just kind of went down the rabbit hole pre-show and came back up. And two of the things that I was looking at, because my eye test was telling me these guys just don't shoot enough.
Right.
And so I looked, and Owen Tippett, thanks to Money Puck, Owen Tippett's 50th in the league in shot attempts at like 5.5. So then I'm like, if he's 50th, where the hell is Travis Konechny? 96th in shot attempts.
Right. Now, going back to the eye test a little bit,
Yes.
we've talked about the fact that they're not shooting. I think the other big factor in the eye test for this team is the breakout quality just isn't there.
Oh, no, it's not good.
And that is what's leading to poor offensive execution here because if you can't get out of the zone, how can you have shot attempts at all, right? And I think there's that.
Yes.
And there's also plays on the rush, which they've generally still been pretty good at if they can get a rush going. And that's a big if versus getting set up and having a true offensive strategy. And that's where I think some of the failures have come into play as well.
So also with, the rush, maybe they're getting like 5-6 good rush attempts a game. That's what it seems like to me. I don't know the number. So there's that. The power play is a factor in this for shooting.
Right. But
For
this is a
shot
5-on-5 discussion.
No, I know, but I'm just saying overall, because overall, like what I was looking up was not 5-on-5, it was overall. But on 5-on-5, I still don't think they're shooting enough. And then when the power play does derail, it does affect the team's psyche and probably gets guys to shoot less too, because things just break down. That's all. That's all I'm trying to say.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's possible for sure. I think we've just seen a definite step backwards in execution of stuff that they were doing last
Yes.
year. Well, is not working this year. And is it a combination of the Flyers personnel not being able to execute and other teams figuring out the Flyers? Probably. But the numbers kind of bear that out, right? So this year, the Flyers Corsi 4% is at 48.29, which is 23rd in the NHL. And the thing about the Flyers is their expected goals per 60 are so much higher than their actual goals per 60. And that expected goal differential per 60 is the explanation right there. The Flyers are doing some things well. They have the guys that can shoot, and yet, the expected goal differential per 60 this year is 0.31, which is in a bad direction, right?
Right.
Last year, it was also in a bad direction, but it was much less at 0.18. And that's the difference in the results of last year versus this year.
Yeah, I think that's a big thing. I mean, I'm always like a little skeptical about expected anything. Expected goals against, expected goals for, because you could look at a goalie, and some of these goalies that are great with expected goals against in reality are just okay. And so, like, we don't always, advanced stats don't always tell you everything. It just gives you a piece of the story, and then we kind
Right.
of have to piece together the rest. And yeah, like as an example, you brought up Jamie Drysdale. If you'd have told me at the beginning of the season, what am I looking for at Jamie Drysdale? I'd say he's got to get 40 points. He's a top pairing defenseman, or at least a top power play defenseman. That's the beginning of the year. We know things have gotten jostled around, but even so, it would have been around 40 points, however he's going to get them. He's at 20. And so it's disappointing. And if I go down the list, I could find 5, 6 guys that are just disappointing output, period.
Right. And that's where you go to just the pure shooting and scoring chance
Yes.
stats that help back that up. So
Yeah.
last year in scoring chances for per 60 at 5-on-5, the Flyers were at 27.65, which was good enough for 13th in the NHL. This year, much less, 25.28 scoring chances for per 60, which is only good enough for 25th in the NHL. Now, overall, the NHL is shooting less than they
Mhm.
were last year. So there is something to that a little bit, to weight the numbers a little bit. However, the Flyers to go over a two shots or two scoring chances for per game less this year than last year, that's going to have an impact on your 5-on-5 scoring.
It is. There's no doubt it's going to have an impact. And yeah, I mean, look, this is what coaches kind of game plan against. Like, what could you do to suppress shots? Like, that's shot
Mhm.
suppression is a big deal. Now, again, with John gone, some of the blame now has to fall on the players too. It wasn't
Right.
just the coach.
Right. And I think, you talk about unblocked shots that miss the net,
Yeah.
right? That's a
Yeah.
key stat that we have to look at 5-on-5, because we've talked about shooting accuracy with this team, and that
Yeah.
guys like Owen Tippett and Tyson Foerster are missing the net more than they should. And you look at those two guys in their seasons last year versus this year, the eye test bears that out very obviously. But if you look at the team stat of unblocked shots percentage that miss the net. So you want to have a low number here in this stat.
Mhm.
Last year, the Flyers were seventh best in the NHL at 30.1%. Vegas was the best that year. And this year, the Flyers are slightly worse at 13th best in the NHL, but their unblocked shots that miss the net, 33.94%. So almost 34%. That's essentially a 4% worse shooting percentage of unblocked shots. Like, that's not good.
No, I mean, again, I'll just go back to what's the cost of a shooting coach or cost of the team missing all these shots and losing games?
Right. I think,
That's an
I
existential question I throw out
it
into the
is.
ether. That's all.
And we've said that for 2-3 years now,
Right.
right? Because we've seen key guys that are missing the net when they
Yep.
shouldn't be. And that is something that the Flyers absolutely have to work on. Now, in the big picture, all of this leads to the Flyers losing more games than they should because
Mhm.
they can't score
Mhm.
ultimately, because they can't score enough to account for the bad goaltending. And we
And
know
that's a factor.
that's the factor in the win-loss column here. It's not a factor in the how are the Flyers doing offensively and shooting wise. And
Right.
I think that there's a way to separate that in our minds, right?
There
Because
is.
we can accept losses because the Flyers goaltending is bad. Now it's terrible and we don't like it, but we understand it a lot better. Whereas if the Flyers were still shooting the way they did even last year, which was not the best, but still better than this year. Like if they were executing better offensively and shooting better offensively, we could accept some of these losses due to
Oh, yeah.
unlucky and bad goaltending, right?
Yeah. I also think Matvei Michkov is propping them up to some degree here. Imagine if they
Probably.
didn't have him,
Yeah, I know. I know. Now he misses a lot of shots too, but
but
I
not as
think
many as the other guys.
yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So I think that again, I haven't run those numbers, but we will after the season because we'll do
Yeah.
at least a full episode, if not more, on Matvei Michkov and his impact this season. I bet you, like, you look at the stats, this team with and without Matvei Michkov,
Oh,
there
it's
is going
gotta
to be a
be
stark
brutal.
difference here,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So I think when all is said and done, Bradshaw is trying to be nice to his players and not say anything bad about how the execution hasn't been there, but the numbers bear it out. And
Right.
it's just one of those things that 5-on-5, they're going to have to find a coach that can figure out a way to use this personnel more effectively. And I
To
think
make them more
Bradshaw,
offensive,
yeah,
I think
yeah,
Danny is going to have to ask that question of every coach, even though he didn't
correct.
tell the media what he's looking for in a coach. He's got to be telling them, we have to get more shots. We have to be able to score more. I could live with losing games in other ways, but
Right,
how do we fix
right.
this?
Exactly, because I think this is the linchpin here, and I'm not saying Bradshaw can't be that person. I mean, my god, he's
No,
only coached 4 games. I'm just
right.
saying, as of now,
In general, that's just
that's
going to be asked.
that's gonna be asked, and it has to be a key part of the coaching search, but I think it is really interesting because we talk about the power play a ton and how bad it is, but
Right.
5-on-5 is very important, and
Oh,
we
yeah.
need to look at that too, especially in the coaching search. So, we will talk about this more when this season is over and look at the overall team and how each of these individual guys are contributing to it. In the meantime, we are going to turn our attention to the upcoming NHL draft and look at another draft eligible prospect in forward Malcom Spence. Looking for a snack that's both delicious and nutritious? Crack into a good source of protein with Wonderful Pistachios. Wonderful Pistachios is one of the highest protein nuts, and each 1 ounce serving has 6 grams of protein, giving you over 10% of your daily value. Plus, they're packed with fiber and better for you unsaturated fats to help you feel full longer. Personally, I love the no shells variety. It's the perfect grab and go snack for my busy days. I have them at my desk while I'm working, and a ways back, I had some friends over for a movie night. Instead of that popcorn, we passed around a variety of flavors. Everybody loved all of them, but the Wonderful Pistachios, chili roasted no shells, and sea salt and vinegar no shells were the biggest hits by far. So delicious and healthy too. Wonderful Pistachios is a complete protein providing all 9 essential amino acids. These little green wonders pack a protein punch. So get snacking and get cracking with the snack that packs a protein punch. Visit wonderfulpistachios.com to learn more. All right, Russ. The draft lottery will be on May 5th or 6th. It's looking like we don't have that set in stone yet, but I've started doing the Tankathon lottery simulator every day now. And today's test only took me 2 tries to get the first overall pick for the Flyers. So, that's not too bad,
Nope.
I guess.
That's probably luckier than the Flyers will be.
Yes, yes. We'll get into that and all the ins and outs of that once the regular season ends for sure. But Malcom Spence is an interesting option
Hmm.
for the Flyers here. And I think he'll come in at one of those guys that they could potentially move up for because I think they're going to be too high when
Hmm.
all is said and done to take him with that first pick that they have. But I think he might be worth trading up for. He is a left winger on the Erie Otters, and he is an older 18-year-old. He has a September birthday, so he's already, I think, ahead of the game in terms of his physical development. And
Maturation, yeah.
yeah, and maturation. We talk about, some of the younger guys with runway. Well, this is the opposite benefit that you get from having one of the older guys here. And, he's already at 200 pounds. So he's a big, solid guy, right? He
Yes.
is a playmaker who is a great passer. He can get the puck through tight seams, but he's also a really good two-way forward and will absolutely get involved defensively, right?
Yeah, he gets 24% defensive zone starts according to Instat, so that's really good. Power play, PK, does them both. He wins 48% of puck battles, which is really good. He hits and he also draws penalties. Like he doesn't take too many, but he does draw them. And he draws them
Mhm.
because he's a big guy. And if he's got the puck behind the net, sometimes he's going to get dragged down. He likes that spot in the corner or behind the net to pass. Now on the power play, it's different. Power play, he can pass from anywhere, but that's how he kind of sets it up 5-on-5. And then he's dangerous right around that crease area. That's where he's doing a lot of scoring. And yeah, you would imagine that's the case. He's got a pretty good wrist shot. He is a high floor guy. Like you look at him and
Mhm.
you say, this will get a little better. That'll get a little better. Little tweak here. He's pretty close to the NHL then after that.
Right, and that's where the appeal lies, right? That
Yeah.
literally everybody says he's a guaranteed NHLer, and I think there's something to that where, we have talked about the Flyers needing to take more risk
Hmm.
here. This is where they could maybe take a little bit more of a risk with their other pick and
Right.
then use this one as more of a safe pick, and that's the
Hmm.
scenario here,
Yeah.
right? So I just wanna make it clear because we have said we want him to take more risks, and this is definitely more of a safe pick, except for the scenario where maybe they combine 2 lower picks to move up to get him,
Yeah, you
right?
do that so you can trade with somebody else's first to swap it. You give a third or something, whatever it's going to take, and you do it. And yeah, he'd be the guy that would be worth it to do it because he would be a true power forward. Now, you might say, well, Russ, Tyson Foerster is a power forward, but not in the true sense of the word. He's still a shooter first. He does some
Right,
of those other things. Yes, he could play big in times, but he is not that prototypical true power forward. And Tippett is definitely not. And
right,
so like they don't have that and they need that.
right, and you look at his stats, only 5 of his 32 goals were on the power play, so we were just talking about 5-on-5 play.
And
This is a
that's your
guy
guy.
who's very good on 5-on-5 play, right?
Yeah, he's 6'2", 201 already. He'll probably top out about 215, 217. Yeah, he'll do anything to make a play. Like this guy is all effort and he does the hard work.
So right now, Erie is in the first round of the OHL playoffs. He's got 3 goals and 2 assists in those first 4 games of the playoffs so far. In the 5th game, he didn't get any points, but I guess we'll cut him some slack given how
Yeah.
well he did
Yeah, yeah,
in
yeah.
those first 4 games. It is the 4 versus 5 series, so Erie is a solid team, but not a great team, we'll say, in the OHL right now, and it is interesting because I've seen some scouts saying this was generally a weaker season for him this year versus last year overall. He does have more regular season points total
Hmm.
than he did last
A lot
year.
more.
And but so I'm wondering like where did that come from?
Probably the playoffs. Everybody gets really super nitpicky about the playoffs, so I think that's where it comes from. Because I even looked his last 5 games, he had 7 points. He had a 3-assist game. So,
Yeah,
like, if you want to say it's fallen off without, Schaefer, I would say anybody would fall off a little bit without Schaefer, but it really was not
I
season
know.
long. I mean, Schaefer only played 17 games, so I think he's done okay. I just think playoffs are different, and yeah, it'll probably get super nitpicky with that.
Yeah, I think that is part of it, and I think that, the Schaefer thing, I think you're right, that there's too much of a differential there. Now, he was on the U18 team for Canada last year, again, because he's an older guy, he had aged out
Right.
of the U18s this
Yeah,
year,
he
but he's
won't be there.
obvious but he wasn't good enough, and I say that with a grain of salt because, who is good enough? We saw, Denver Barkey didn't make the World
Right. He
Juniors
had
team.
like, 60
A
points at that
cajillion
point.
points.
Yeah.
Right, right. So, obviously, for a guy like, Spencer here, that it was gonna be an impossibility
Right.
for Malcolm Spence to make the World Junior squad this year at a young 18, right, relative to the rest of the prospects out there. Do you think he has a chance at making the squad next year?
Yeah, I do think he has a chance. I think he'll be in camp for sure because he is that kind of guy where you're like, we kind of need one of these guys. And, Martone, if he's healthy, then maybe he eliminates that, but who knows?
Right. So I think that's something to look forward to as far as his development goes. And looking at the rankings overall, you had him at 11
Hmm.
on your list. So to our point earlier about where the Flyers are and my tankathon spins of I think, the Flyers are looking at likely being in the I would say the 5 or 6 slot when all is said
Yeah, I
and
think so.
done here. So if this guy is at 11 for you, like, is he worth trading up for
With the other pick,
with the
yes.
other picks? Yeah.
With one of the other picks and a combination of other picks, yes. So that's how you could make this first round a little sweeter, where you're like, okay, with this first pick, we got X, and let's just say, it's a center. Um, so now we're feeling pretty good about that. We could use a power forward in this system because, this guy's going to take 4 or 5 years anyhow, at least 4. And so, where do Flyers stand for that? Well, they actually could use that. And so that's where it's like, yeah, this guy kind of makes sense. And then they could worry about getting another defenseman or the goalie.
Yep. I think so. But if they could package together one of the lower picks and maybe a second rounder
Mhm.
or something like that,
I
that
would
would
do
be
a
the more
third first, and
ideal.
then if you have to do a second, I'd do it.
Yeah.
If he's on the board and it's like you could get him, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that would be the way to go for me. But yet another really interesting prospect to add to our spreadsheet of draft eligible prospects that we've covered. Our list is now of legal drinking age. We have 21 guys on
It's
it
pretty good.
at the moment, and so you can check that out. There's a link in our show notes as well as pinned to our Twitter and Blue Sky profile. So check it out. On tomorrow's show, we're going to continue our weekend back-to-back preview in the context of what can we learn from those teams as far as how they've built their teams to where they are now. The New York Islanders and Ottawa Senators are very different on that front. So looking forward to having that discussion on tomorrow's show. As a reminder, we always want to hear from you. So you can send in your mailbag questions or Flyers thoughts to any of our socials at Locked On Flyers. You can email us at lockedonflyers@gmail or comment over on our YouTube channel. I'm Rachel. I'm on Blue Sky and Twitter at rmiriam. That's RMIRIAM.
I'm Russ. I'm at Sportsology on the same socials, SPORTSOLOGY.
Thanks for making Locked On Flyers your first listen today. For your next listen, check out the all new Locked On NHL game night. Every game, every night until a Stanley Cup champion is crowned. You can get the local analysis you love on a national scale. You can find it on the Locked On NHL channel on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. Have a great day, everyone.